The Denver Broncos were the one seed in the AFC in 2025 and had a really successful season. And if it wasn't for a heartbreaking bonix injury in the divisional round of the playoffs, this is a Broncos team that very easily could have made the Super Bowl. And yet, despite all of the success that the Broncos had last season, I don't see enough people talking about the Broncos as a legitimate contender for the Super Bowl this year. They did nothing but get better this season, and I'm really excited to talk about this Broncos roster. But if you guys do enjoy NFL content like this, be sure to hit that like button. A football animation will appear when you do so, and it really helps get this video out to more Denver Broncos fans and NFL fans alike. And comment down below if you guys think I'm too high or too low on the Broncos, and let me know what you guys think the ceiling for this Broncos team is. But let's talk about the Broncos, who they have one of the best coaching staffs in the league. And it's because you've got Sean Payton, who really, since he came to Denver, has really done an excellent job of just completely revitalizing a franchise that fell dead for a long time. We weren't sure when the Broncos were going to get back, and they have back-to-back playoff appearances. And Sean Payton is a big part of that. While I do think he's a good CEO type of head coach, he is still a phenomenal offensive play designer where, yeah, it's a very complex offense, but at its roots, it's a very West Coast style offense. Quick, high percentage passing games. You're going to see a lot of slants. It's going to prioritize getting the ball out of the hand of the quarterback quickly. They don't put a ton on the quarterback, but you do see that they're going to try to control the pace. They're going to try to, go in with a very clear game script. And I think we've seen these Broncos offenses have a lot of success. You look at what he's done with Bo Nix, where they do a lot of the play action. They get him under center. They're finding ways to utilize him. I think that there is a lot of those modern spread concepts. You see a lot of that. And Sean Payton, as good of an offensive designer as he is, I think he's a really good just overall CEO, and he's done a great job of finding coordinators and getting the most out of these players. I think this is a really good overall head coach, one of the best in the league, and something that you should feel really confident about. And then you look at the rest of these coaches. Davis Webb gets promoted internally to be the offensive coordinator here in Denver. He is a little bit of an unknown, played just a few years ago as a quarterback himself. And we're seeing a lot of teams kind of go to these young former quarterbacks. We just talked about the Eagles. Sean Mannion followed that path. You look at what the Commanders are doing. They're following that same path. And they're just going to go with a young quarterback here. Davis Webb, former late round pick to the New York Giants, didn't play a ton, but we've seen Sean Payton get the most out of his coordinators and help get those guys other jobs. So I think Davis Webb is a player or a name to watch next year for a head coach if this Broncos offense can take another step. And then you got Vance Joseph as the defensive coordinator here. I think Vance Joseph, just an incredible story how his career was basically over. The former head coach for the Denver Broncos, he ends up coming back to Denver to be the defensive coordinator. And it wasn't pretty. Obviously, he has that notorious game against Miami, but really from that game, this is a Broncos defense that is completely turned around, and they have done a really good job of getting the most out of this defense and becoming arguably the best defense in the NFL. They run a very aggressive defense. They're going to play with a lot of five-man fronts. They were third in the NFL in blitz rate last season, so they're going to bring pressure. They're going to attack. But I also think another stat to really take into consideration here is how often the Broncos played man coverage last season. The Broncos were second in the NFL in man coverage. And obviously when you have the corners that you do, you can do that. This is a team that is going to play with a lot of heavy personnel on the defensive front. They play with a true nose tackle. They're going to bring pressure. They're going to blitz a lot. They're going to really play a lot of man coverage. But when they do get into those zone looks, there is a lot of that Vic Fangio style cover 6, cover 8, split safety. I think that he has done a phenomenal job of mixing and matching coverages. They are one of the best and most aggressive defenses in the league. But they are very balanced at the same time. So I think Vance Joseph is one of the best defensive coordinators in football and has done an absolutely phenomenal job here in Denver of revitalizing his career and getting the most out of an incredibly talented defense that we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. It's a great coaching staff. You're led by Sean Payton, one of the best head coaches in the NFL, clearly in the top 10 in my opinion, and you've got one of the best defensive coordinators in the league as well. It makes this a really good staff, and it gives this Broncos team a high floor. But let's talk about this roster, and let's start with the offense, where there is a lot to get excited about on the offensive side of the ball. And to me, it starts with Bo Nix, who I think has been a really good quarterback since the moment he was drafted in Denver. He's entering year 3. It's a little bit interesting with Bo Nix because I think he's done a really good job throughout his career of being accurate, taking care of the football. The turnover-worthy play rate came up, but there's a lot to like about Bo Nix as a quarterback, in my opinion. I think he's a high-level processor. I think he's accurate. I think he makes good decisions with the football, doesn't put the ball in harm's way very often, just a 2.9% turnover-worthy play rate. They get the ball out of his hands quickly. I don't really have a lot of negative things to say about Bo Nix. I think you could argue that, yeah, maybe he doesn't have the greatest arm and maybe he's more of a system quarterback. And while that might be fair, here's my biggest complaint with Bo Nix. I don't think that the offense has really trusted him enough. I think when you put more on Bo Nix's plate, that's when he thrives. And you look at what he did in the divisional round playoff matchup against Buffalo, where he throws for 3 touchdowns and looks really good with the football. He's a good athlete, can make plays happen with his legs. I think he's tough. He stands in the pocket, makes big throws. He's got, I would say he's got towards the bottom of the league in terms of arm talent, but could still make good throws. And I think as the season progressed, he continuously started to look better and better. And I do think that he's got a really high ceiling to be in the top 10 to 15 quarterbacks in the league. But I have a hard time knowing if he's going to reach that point for the simple fact that I don't feel like the offense really trusts him. I feel like it's a very simplistic offense. His average depth of target is 8 yards. They aren't asking him to push the ball down the field. They aren't asking him to drive the ball as much. And I think Bo Nix can do it. And I think that's the biggest thing I want to see from the Broncos this year. And I think it's something they're going to prioritize is trying to get some more bigger chunk plays through the air. And we'll talk about one of their big additions here in a little bit and how much I think he helps that. But I'm a very big Bo Nix fan, was a big fan of him coming out of Oregon. I think he's still got room to improve, and I love him as a starting quarterback. I think he is a quarterback that you can win a Super Bowl with. Your backup room is Jarrett Stidham, who we had to see in the AFC Championship game. Unfortunately, it wasn't pretty. But as far as backup quarterbacks go, I don't hate this really at all. I think he was kind of thrown into an impossible situation there. And, it wasn't pretty. The weather was awful. Jarrett Stidham's a fine backup quarterback. And then you got Sam Ehlinger as QB3. Overall, I do like this quarterback room. I'm very high on Bo Nix. I feel like that's a big reason why I have the Broncos at number 3 in my power rankings entering the year, is because I am higher on Bo Nix than most people. Where I am lower on this Broncos team, however, is the running game, where this is just a really weird group. And I don't think they've got an established number 1 guy. And I think that's something that they are looking for here. You've got J.K. Dobbins, who is one of the more interesting and fun running backs in the league. Like, he was having a pretty good start to the season. First 10 weeks of the season, he's got 772 yards, 4 touchdowns. He looks great. He gets hurt in week 10. And we don't see him again for the rest of the season. And unfortunately with J.K. Dobbins, that is the case every year. This is a guy that cannot stay healthy for a full calendar season. He regularly seems to miss time, and he only played 27% of the Broncos' snaps last season. Injuries have been a huge question really throughout his entire career. And I am worried about, is he going to be able to stay healthy throughout this season? And if he can't, do I love the depth here? Not really. And I think a big part of the reason why I don't is I just was never really a big RJ Harvey fan. I get it. He had some fans coming out of the draft. I was not one of them. He looked really good against Vegas in week 14 where he had 75 yards. But on 165 carries, he had just 597 yards, 7 touchdowns, had under 3 yards after contact per attempt. He was a 24-year-old rookie that, to me, was a good athlete. He had some quickness. He was able to make some guys miss. But I didn't think that he was a guy, especially in a loaded running back class, that was worthy of a second-round selection. And I think so far that kind of looks true. I had RJ Harvey as kind of like a mid-round running back prospect. I had a 4th-round grade on him. Look, he's got vision and he's got some really good like nastiness, like in terms of what he can do with his jump cut, but he's not a good blocker. He doesn't have great contact balance, and I don't know that he's going to be this super dynamic receiving entity, although he did have 424 yards as a rookie. So we'll see what they can get from RJ Harvey in year 2. I think they really want him to take a step up, but I am fascinated by Jonah Coleman, who was this team's, I believe he was a 4th-round pick. I thought Jonah Coleman was one of the steals of the draft. Coleman is the complete opposite of RJ Harvey, where I don't think he's got great speed, but this is an early downs player. He's a good receiver. He's got excellent power. He can run for tough yardage, is a great short yardage back. I think he's going to be really good here, and I think there's a chance he could emerge as the number 1 running back. We've seen Sean Payton time and time again basically prove that, hey, I don't really care about your draft slot. Like, you have to go out, you got to play. And I do think we could see a good dosage of Jonah Coleman this year because I think he's going to be consistent. You got Jaleel McLaughlin here as well, who's a pretty interesting player. He's more of a special teams player for them, but gives them some speed and played a good bit for them last year. You got Tyler Beatty. They've got a lot of running backs here in this room. I would imagine McLaughlin makes the team as a special teamer, but you've got Dobbins, you've got RJ Harvey and Jonah Coleman. I think that's your big 3. And if Harvey can take a step up, this could be a really solid running back room. But I do want to shout out Adam Prentice, who will play. He played 18% of their snaps. The Broncos don't play a lot of 12 personnel, but they will play with a fullback. So Adam Prentice is there. But let's talk about this receiving room, which is one of the more improved units in the league, I think. Like, I don't think enough people have it's really set in for a lot of people that the Broncos traded for Jaylen Waddle. And Jaylen Waddle is the exact type of receiver that this team needed, right? Like, they needed some more speed. They needed a guy that could create separation and could win vertical. I like Troy Franklin. Very inconsistent player. Marvin Mims, I think, is really undersized. The last 2 years for Jaylen Waddle haven't been awesome. He had 744 yards. He missed a little bit of time this past year for Miami because he played in just 73% of their snaps. But when he had 910 yards, 6 touchdowns, he averaged about 15 yards per reception. And when you go back to his first 3 seasons of the league where that passing game and you had a healthy Tua and you had Tyreek Hill next to him, he was awesome. He had 1,000 yards the first 3 years of his career. Jaylen Waddle is a guy that gives you true inside-outside flexibility. He's one of the fastest receivers in the NFL and is an absolutely dynamic route runner. This is a guy that can create separation at all 3 levels, fluid hips, can win vertical. He's got very strong hands. I think that's another thing that is going to be big for him. And he plays physical above the rim. He had a 54% contested catch rate on a career high 22 contested targets. I love that. Had under a 5% drop rate. I'm really high on what Jaylen Waddle can do in this offense. And you look at what Denver has been lacking in. They haven't really had that true consistent vertical threat in that offense. Well, now you pair Jaylen Waddle here, who I think is one of the best vertical receivers in the league, but I think he's going to give them a lot more dynamism. He's going to be able to play in that short to intermediate, make plays after the catch where he is dynamic. I'm all in on Jaylen Waddle as an addition, and I actually think it's going to make Courtland Sutton even better. I've always thought Courtland Sutton was an underappreciated receiver. He's had 1,000 yards the back-to-back seasons with Bo Nix, 8 touchdowns. He's a really good player. Like, he's got size. He's really physical. Not a great athlete, but a pretty solid separator for you. I think the hands, he had 8 drops last season, 3 in the playoffs, which you want to see get better. But he's a really good contested catch weapon who's kind of been forced into this team's number 1 receiver role. And I just don't think that's what Courtland Sutton is at this point in his career. I don't think he's a number 1. I think he's one of the best number 2s in the league, though. And you pair him alongside Jaylen Waddle, I think that's a really dynamic duo that complement each other really, really well. And then that allows the rest of this depth to really fall into place, where you got Pat Bryant, who's entering year 2, was a 3rd-round pick who I really liked. I thought was very similar to Courtland Sutton. He started to come on late for the Broncos, didn't play a lot the first 8 to 9 weeks of the season, but gets on the field late, makes some plays. Pat Bryant's got really strong hands. I think he's physical. I think he's a guy that can win contested catches. He had a 60% contested catch win rate last season, and he'll be 24 years old in December. I think he's probably going to profile best as like the Courtland Sutton backup. But they've got him slated as the starting slot receiver. So if they want a big slot option, Pat Bryant could definitely do that. You got Marvin Mims here, who is going to be a really dynamic punt returner. Marvin Mims, I do really like. I think he's underrated, but he just hasn't been able to find a lot of consistent playing time here in Denver. He goes into being a backup slot role here for this team. He's got strong hands, really elusive with the ball in his hands, where I think he's dynamic after the catch. He's got speed. He's got some nice plays there. I like that. And then you got Troy Franklin here as well, who, like I said, I've always been a pretty big Troy Franklin fan. I think he is a vertical threat for this team. It looked early on like he might actually be turning the corner, and it just didn't end up happening for him. Ends up kind of falling out of the rotation. The drops have been a big concern for him. He had 8 drops last season. He's got to get more consistent as a route runner. He's got to play more physical, and his hands have to improve. But I do like Troy Franklin as a wide receiver 5 here. You got Lil Jordan Humphrey, who's a decent kind of 6th receiver for you as well. And the rest are kind of undrafted free agents. Hakeem Butler comes in. A guy that I believe was formerly in Arizona. He comes over from the XFL. We'll see what he can do. He's got crazy size. But overall, this is a really, really good group for the Broncos receiving room. I think it's incredibly deep, and I think you finally have found that number 1 weapon for bonix in Jaylen Waddle. So I really, really like that. The tight end room, unfortunately, is not great. I just don't really like this group, where you got Adam Troutman, who played a majority of this team's snaps, a majority being 57%, I believe. Not much of a receiving option for this team. He's 6'5", he's 253, did very little for this team as a receiver, but as a pass blocker and as a guy that can play closer to the line of scrimmage, I think he's fine. He's been an above average blocking tight end for the Broncos, and that's kind of going to be his role here. They have Evan Ingram, who's entering year 2 here. Evan Ingram is not a blocker whatsoever. He's kind of the complete opposite of Adam Troutman. In fact, he's one of the worst run blocking tight ends in the league. But in theory, he should be a good receiver. He just didn't really find a lot of consistent playing time here either. So he's going to be 32 years old here in about a month. We'll see what he can do. He's entering year 10. I am interested in Justin Joly, though, the 5th-round pick out of NC State. He's got athleticism, really improved as a blocker in his final season at NC State. I think he moves well. I think he's got strong hands. Let's see what he can do. But the tight end room is ultimately the weakness of this offense. They don't play very much 12 personnel. In fact, they ranked towards the bottom of the league in that category. So you really only need 1 tight end on the field. I think that Adam Troutman is a serviceable one, but definitely an area that I think Denver should look to address in next year's draft or free agency. But we're going to finish this offense off on a very positive note, and that is the offensive line, which you could make an argument that I would probably agree with, that the Broncos have the best offensive line in football. I think that they have done a absolutely phenomenal job of getting the most out of these offensive linemen. Like, I really, really like what they have here. And we're going to talk about a lot of these guys here, starting at left tackle with Garrett Bowles. Broncos fans, I think are thrilled that Garrett Bowles has kind of developed, because early in his career, it didn't look like it was going to happen for Garrett Bowles. As someone that grew up in the Denver area, it felt like every other play he was getting penalized. In the first 3 seasons of his career, he had 46 penalties, but really started to turn the page. And now the penalties are still a little high. He can get a little grabby at times. He has developed into being one of the best left tackles in the NFL. Allowed just 23 pressures and 0 sacks on 802 pass blocking snaps. He's a good run blocker. He's got 4.95 speed. There's a lot to really like about Garrett Bowles. He made the NFL's top 100 list. He's going to be 35 years old next May. He's entering year 10, but he has shown no signs of regression and has gotten better with age. He's gotten better as a run blocker. As a pass protector, he's so efficient. He's been really, really comfortable there. And I think you feel awesome about Garrett Bowles at left tackle. At your left guard spot, you got Ben Powers, who is an interesting player. He didn't play a lot for this team last year, played in just 595 snaps. Probably the weak link on this Broncos offensive line. He's a okay run blocker, okay pass protector, allowed 15 pressures on 379 snaps. Nothing too crazy about, but it could be worse at that left guard spot. At center, you've got Luke Wattenberg, which I was wrong about this. I didn't think this was going to be a very successful move, because you have Lloyd Cushenberry, who is really good for them. He has come in, Luke Wattenberg, and played really, really well for this team. He's a guy that pass protects really well, allowed 15 pressures on 678 pass blocking snaps, and as a run blocker has consistently gotten better year after year after year. I think he's got some upside to continue to get better. He's entering his 3rd year as a full-time starter. I think he's got the arrow pointing up on him. He'll be 29 years old in about a month. He's still pretty young for an offensive lineman. I like Luke Wattenberg. And then the right side of your line is ridiculous. You got Quinn Miners, who he's probably the best run blocking guard in the NFL right now. I think from a run block vantage point, he is awesome. He plays with physicality. He plays with nastiness. He is an absolute mauler in the run game. Got paid a big-time contract. I mean, for a 3rd-round pick from a D2 school in Wisconsin, Whitewater, he has been everything and more that you could have hoped for. He is an elite run blocker. As a pass protector, had his worst season, allowed 3 sacks, 31 pressures. I think he can bounce back in pass protection, but Quinn Miners is in the short list with guys like Chris Lindstrom, with guys like Quentin Nelson, to be the best guard in the NFL. I think Tyler Smith is in there as well. Quinn Miners is right there. From a run blocking standpoint, you could argue he is the very best. And then at right tackle, you got Mike McGlinchey, who is a really solid overall, just do-it-all right tackle. He played 99% of this team's snaps last year, was really healthy. Again, really good run blocker. They can run to the right side pretty often because you've got Miners and McGlinchey there. Overall, he's a solid pass protector. Again, allowed 42 pressures. You feel fine about that. This is a really, really good offensive line. The depth isn't bad either. You've got a few different players that really intrigue me. Cage Casey, the 4th-round pick, fascinating. I like him over Ben Powers in the long run. I saw Cage Casey as more of a guard, but a really good move. You got Matt Peart here, who is one of the better swing tackles in the league, a guy that I think can play inside and outside for you. Don't hate that for this team at all. You have Alex Palzewski, who played for this team last season as well when you did have some injuries on the interior, particularly with Ben Powers. And he stepped up and played valiantly for this team. He can play tackle, can play guard. I like this offensive line. I think it is up there for the best offensive lines in the NFL, and it elevates this Broncos offense to being one of the best offenses in the league, I think, going into the year. You might have questions on what's the ultimate ceiling of Bo Nix. He's a high floor, low ceiling guy. Can the run game take a step up? Do you have the bodies at tight end? But I think the addition of Jaylen Waddle and the addition of Jonah Coleman are really going to help elevate this offense. I think, yes, they are going to play that West Coast style. I think it's going to get the ball out of the hands of Bo Nix quickly, but I think they're going to really try to push the ball down the field more. And I am excited to see what that looks like. But that rounds out a really good Broncos offense. Let's talk about this Broncos defense, though. That is absolutely phenomenal. One of the best defenses in the league. I think them, Houston, Seattle, the Rams, and the Eagles are the clear top 5. But let's talk about what I think is probably going to be the Broncos' biggest loss is John Franklin Myers. They are in a pretty tough spot there where John Franklin Myers was really good for this team last year. So you've got some questions on who is going to fill that role. Right now, it's going to be Malcolm Roach who's stepping up. We're going to start with the interior of this Broncos defensive line. Malcolm Roach is a perfectly solid interior player, has experience playing with Sean Payton, played with him in New Orleans. He's a guy that's going to be, because they play those 5-man fronts, he's going to be your base 3-4 defensive end. He played in 481 snaps. He was okay last year. The tackling has always been an issue for him, but a decent interior pass rushing option for you. Had a couple of sacks in the playoff game against Buffalo. He's not an awesome run defender, but can get after the quarterback and be a nice piece for them in that phase. I don't hate Malcolm Roach. I think it is a downgrade over what you have in John Franklin Myers, but a guy that absolutely can make an impact. So I like what they have in that phase. As for the rest of this defensive line, the interior, you got Zach Allen, who is one of the best interior players in the league. The Broncos paid him a few years back, and he has developed very, very nicely. He can play inside, can play outside, and has gotten so much underrated, I feel like, in terms of defensive linemen in the league. 70% of the playing time last year for the Broncos. He got nearly a 12% pressure rate, 60 pressures, 7 sacks. On top of that, I think he is a really disruptive run defender. He's a guy that I think can take on double teams. He can penetrate because he's a pretty solid athlete, can get upfield. He's 285 pounds. He's better as a pass rusher than as a run defender, but I don't think he's a liability there either. So that's your 2 base 3-4 defensive ends. You got DJ Jones at nose tackle, who is what you expect him to be. He's going to take up space. He's going to defend the run. 305 pounds, not a great athlete, but a guy that can create pressure from that interior alignment as well. All of the guys on this defensive line can create pressure, and I think that's why this team has been so impactful at rushing the passer. DJ Jones falls in line there. Now, what I will say, there are 2 wild cards here for this Broncos team. Savion Jones, their 3rd-round pick, entering year 2 from last year. Really interesting player that always profiled as an interior presence to me, played a lot of edge at LSU. I'm really interested to see what he's going to be able to do here. Was a year away, likely going to see the field a little bit more as that John Franklin Myers replacement. I think Savion Jones has it, and then Tyler Onyedem as well. He got some buzz late in the draft process because he's super explosive. He's a good athlete. He's got quick hands. And I thought that he was a really solid pick for this team in the 3rd round. Those being 2 wild cards that can come on the field, both can create pressure. I think Onyedem's the better pass rusher. Jones is the better run defender. So you've got some versatility there and how you can utilize these guys. This is a really, really good group, and one that I'm excited to see how it takes that step in the right direction without John Franklin Myers. But the edge duo is fantastic. You've got Nik Bonitto, who was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Not that I think he ever had a real chance of winning because Myles Garrett was that good. He had 78 pressures, 14 sacks, a 20% pressure rate. He is just a freak athlete, 238 pounds. So he is undersized, is not going to impact the run really at all. It's why they kind of rotate him off the field as much as they do. He does get rotated off on early downs because he is a pretty poor run defender. But with that said, his explosiveness, bend, the quickness with his hands, that ability to set up pass rush moves, he is dynamic on what he can do, and a guy that is just getting better and better. He's still just 26 years old. I'm really high on Nik Bonitto as your edge 1 here. Really good player. And then you got Jonathan Cooper, who's Had an interesting offseason, to say the least. We'll leave it at that. He's a really solid second edge piece for this team as well, who I do think creates pressure, had 11 sacks, 57 pressures. Better run defender than Nikbonitto, tackles pretty well. He's a guy that also can make some plays as a downhill player for this team. A former 7th round pick, you look at this team, they have found so many gems in the draft, whether it be Jonathan Cooper, whether it be Quinn Miners, whether it be some of these other really young pieces that they have, a Riley Moss, who they drafted late, Jaquan McMillian, who we'll get to. They've drafted incredibly well. Cooper and Bonitto are one of the best edge duos in the league. The depth here, it's not great. You got Dondre Tillman here, who played a little bit for them. I don't think he's anything to get overly excited about. 247 pounds, had 5 sacks. It feels like every player that the Broncos played last year got multiple sacks. Jonah Ellis still intrigues me. He's entering year 3. Didn't play a lot, but I like what he brings as a pass rusher. He's a solid coverage player, had some moments there as a drop linebacker. And he's 23 years old. There's some real potential for Jonah Ellis, in my opinion, to really develop. And then this is kind of a hybrid conversation where you got Drew Sanders as well here, who is listed as a linebacker. I think he's going to do a little bit of both. Hasn't played real football since the beginning of 2024, missed all of 2025. I'm interested in Drew Sanders. He's 25 years old, a good athlete, and especially as we pivot over to the linebacker room, Drew Sanders was an awesome run defender coming out of Arkansas. There's some potential there. He, in the preseason, got on the field, made some impact plays. I'm intrigued by what he can bring, especially if he can stay healthy, because this linebacker room is the weakness of this defense. Not that it is a bad linebacker room, but it's nothing to get overly excited about. Alex Singleton is your starting linebacker right now in the middle. He's going to be your green dot. He's a guy that is limited athletically. He's not this crazy athlete or anything like that, but he got on the field last year, had one of the best seasons of his career, 104 tackles. Does not bring a lot as a coverage defender, but he's really good as a run defender. Like I said, 104 tackles, missed under 10% of his tackles, which was a really good number. He was dealing with some health issues in 2024. Glad to see him back on the field, back healthy, because when he's on the field, he does make a big impact for this team in run defense. You lose Dre Greenlaw, who was in and out of the lineup anyways. You got Justin Strainad here, who is a interesting player. Again, a guy that defends the run pretty well. I like what he does in coverage a little bit better. Had a pick, had a pass breakup. He's got some better range athletically in coverage than an Alex Singleton. I don't think he's anything spectacular. But outside of that, I don't love the depth. You got Red Murdoch in the 7th round from Buffalo, who I think will make this roster and be a really interesting player, but nothing I'm overly excited about. Kareem Reed, who played for Utah, was a great athlete at Utah. Didn't love that. Torian York, I think, has all of the intangibles to be a really good linebacker, but he's so small, 5'10", 226 pounds, extremely short arms, is fighting an uphill battle just to make this team. It's an interesting linebacker room. Definitely the weakness of this team, but I don't think it's a bad group. I think Alex Singleton does elevate this team with what he brings in run defense. Justin Strainad has some coverage upside in his first year as a full starter. But let's finish this off with the secondary, which is, in my opinion, pretty easily the best secondary in football. I take that back. I think that them and the Texans are very, very close. But you got Pat Surtain, who is an absolutely elite cornerback, the best corner in the league, full stop. Don't really know that it's super debatable. I mean, he just doesn't get targeted. He got targeted 67 times, allowed 37 receptions, 355 yards, an interception, a pass breakup. For a Broncos team that plays as much man coverage as they do, you're going to see penalties. He had 10 penalties this past season, but he's got it all. Ball skills are there. The fluidity is there. He's got the instincts, the hip fluidity, the speed. He is a true lockdown #1 boundary corner that tackles well, defends the run well. Not really any negatives to say about Pat Surtain, a defensive player of the year 2 years ago, a guy that is on a Hall of Fame trajectory right now and is the best cornerback in the NFL. As your CB2, you got Riley Moss, Riley Moss is interesting because I think a lot of people look at Riley Moss and get very frustrated because of the penalties. This is a guy that was penalized 12 times. Here's the thing about Riley Moss. I think Riley Moss is underrated. Now, he will give up big plays. He allowed 871 yards and 70 receptions. But he allowed 70 receptions. He was targeted 125 times. I think that's a ridiculous number for a guy that is the number 2 corner. Obviously, they're not going to target Surtain. So he gets targeted 125 times. It still allows just a 56% reception percentage. He's a great run defender. He's got speed. He does play overly physical, and you want to see him convert more of these pass breakups to interceptions. Just 1 interception last season, 1 in 2024. But I think you can live with what he's been. I think he's been a much more consistent coverage defender than people will give him credit for. And then you have some really interesting depth options. Jahdae Barron saw the field in just 28% of this team's snaps, but I think you're pretty encouraged about the trajectory he could go on. He's a pretty interesting player. He had a pick 6 in the preseason game against Atlanta. Missed a few too many tackles last season, but had 3 pass breakups and interception when he was on the field, was targeted 43 times. You want to see him get a little bit better. I think that comes with more reps, but I mean, look at the coverage alignments that he played last year. He played 153 snaps in the slot, 93 snaps on the boundary. He played some free safety. He played some in the box. They moved him around. I think that was the beauty of this pick. I think they expected him to be their full-time starting nickel, but I don't think they were expecting Jaquan McMillian to have the year that he had, where he has developed into being one of the more underappreciated nickels in the league. A former undrafted free agent, another just gem for this Broncos team. He defends the run really well, had 27 run stops, 2 forced fumbles last year. A guy that has good ball skills, 3 interceptions, 3 pass breakups. He's fast. He plays aggressive downhill. I really like Jaquan McMillian. In terms of other corner depth here, we mentioned Jahdae Barron. The only other player that I think I would really keep my eye on is Chris Abrams-Drain. I feel like Chris Abrams-Drain, when he does see the field, always seems to make a play or two. I think he's a pretty solid player, has just 340 career snaps up to this point, but I like him as a 5th DB here. So I love this Broncos secondary. Obviously, you've got Pat Surtain, who's one of the best in the league. Riley Moss, I think, is underappreciated. I think Jahdae Barron has the arrow pointing up and will be a really good player for this team. And then you got Jaquan McMillian, who's a really good nickel corner. As for the safety room, another excellent group. Brandon Jones is the team's free safety right now. He's been really good for this team. A signing that I did not like a couple of years ago. I just didn't think that he was going to really do much for this team. He's been really good, though. He's got some speed. He had a much better 2024 season where I think you really saw him convert some big plays, had 3 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, but was targeted just 32 times, allowed 222 yards, tackles well. He's a solid run defender. He's 28 years old. Brandon Jones is a really solid starting safety for this team. And then Talanoa Hufanga is a other really good player for this defense, who is one of the most aggressive, physical run defending safeties in the league. He comes in last season. Now, I will say I am a little concerned about Hufanga, and I will say because of injuries. He missed a lot of time in 2023, missed a lot of time in 2024. He played 97% of the snaps for the Broncos last season, was excellent, had 92 tackles, 34 run stops. In coverage, had 8 pass breakups. That's never really been his game. He's never been the most consistent coverage player. I had 7 interceptions in 2022 and 2023 combined. Outside of that, no interceptions in his career. But he does have really good physicality, plays with his hair on fire, hits like a train. You love that. Again, I would argue that the safety depth isn't great. They have JL Skinner here, who I always liked coming out of Boise State. I think that he will be the next guy off the bench. He's only played 56 career snaps, though. he might have to. And then you got Devon Key here as well, who, again, an interesting depth option for this team that hasn't seen the field a ton. Played a little bit in 2024, looked good as a run defender in the few snaps that he did play last season. But overall, that's kind of your safety room. And it rounds out an excellent Broncos defense and a team that I think is underrated going into the year. Everyone's talking about the AFC champs being like Buffalo, New England. I see Kansas City getting love for whatever reason. Maybe even like you see Cincinnati out there, Baltimore. Denver's right in the mix there. Like my top three in the AFC, like if we're going off of the odds here, like I like Buffalo, Denver, and Cincinnati to make the Super Bowl this year. They have a first place schedule. There are some tough games on there. Like you got to play Kansas City week 1. You got to play the Rams week 3. That's a tough matchup, especially in prime time against that group. You get Buffalo on Christmas Day. You got to go at New England. Like there's some tough matchups. Seattle, you've got to play. And your own division's very tough as well with Kansas City, with Vegas, who I think will be better than people think, and the Chargers. But there's just no way. Like this team won 14 games last year. I think they're better this year than they were last year. Now, I do think that because the schedule's a little bit tougher, they will probably lose more games here. But to me, like I think this is a 12-5 football team. I think that they've got all of the things that you want to see offensively. They got great coaching, and they've got one of the best defenses in the league that I think are going to give a lot of problems to some of these teams. You also get like a really good draw in terms of like you get the AFC East, which is one of the worst divisions in the league outside of Buffalo, and I think they're better than New England. Yeah, I think there's a 12-5 football team, a team that will be competing. I think they do win this division. And I'm really excited to see what they can do this season. But I'd love to hear from you guys, Broncos fans. Do you think I'm too high? Do you think I'm too low on this team? Leave a like on this video. Subscribe if you are new. We've got 2 more previews coming up. You can imagine who they're going to be. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.